Hi, everybody. Good evening. I've been trying sometimes to upload chapter 9 of Stiff, the Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. I did upload it. I tried to go live, but it didn't happen. I was so unlucky to do so. So I'm trying to do it again. And as I said, this time I'm talking about chapter 9, just ahead, decapitation, reanimation, and human head transplant. Uh, Cut off a head and wait a few seconds and see what happens. This is the advice of Mary Roach to whomever wanted to know what happens after life, after a head is cut off of body. You know what happens when you're dead. And similar experiments actually happened. Situations happened with the guillotine. The guillotine came as a replacement to the hanging. Joseph Ignace Guillotine lobbied for such type of capital punishment, claiming it was instantaneous and humane, more humane. More humane, I don't know. So is it really instantaneous? Feelings, personality, and ego cease uh, to be there once the head is cut off. As long as the brain is perfused, it continues to function even after expatriation, and that's what's reported in the book. A man grimaced horribly, she reported, after a surgeon stuck fingers in his Rachidian canal. Witnesses reported seeing decapitated heads, grimace, and grind teeth. The Paris medical community agreed with the librarian at the Paris School of Medicine that decapitated heads could still hear, smell, see, and think, and retain consciousness. Had they been supplied with oxygenated blood, could they have been reanimated? The question that imposes itself. Popular fiction, such as Alexandre Dumas, in his Alexandre Dumas' Millie and Fantôme, Conversations with two executioners. The book was titled, translation in English, A Thousand and a Phantom. And the executioners were talking about when the heads are decapitated, what happens. And do you believe they are dead because they are guillotined? Undoubtedly, said the other. Well, one can see, don't look at the basket when they are together. You've never seen them twist their eyes, grind their teeth for a good 5 minutes after the execution. We're forced to change baskets every 3 months because they cause so much damage. And this was reported in the book, was just fictional. And I Googled it, I Googled the book. It was published in 1849. Then the author talks about some Parisian executioner when one interviewed and one that beheaded oversaw the beheadings of 120 criminals, stated that the deaths were instantaneous. And she said that this cut all the debates short, and the debate remained latent for a while until Le Gallois, a French physiologist, wrote an article in 1812 stating his belief that since the personality that is referred to here as consciousness resided in the brain, it would be possible to reanimate, revive the head by injecting it with oxygenated blood through the severed vessels. The author sided with the fact that as long as the blood continued to circulate in the head, The latter, in theory, should be able to think, see, smell, grind, teeth, and chew, etc., provided the nerves above the neck are intact. In 1884, the French authorities started supplying Jean-Vincent Laborde, the one who initiated prolonged tongue pulling, as mentioned in the book, as a means to verify whether the unconscious person was dead or not. They started supplying him with bodies to study anatomy and also to verify whether consciousness hangs a little bit post decapitation. He immediately drilled bore holes in the heads once he got them and tried stimulating the nervous system with needles. He also tried reanimating them using oxygenated blood following Brown-Sickart's lead. Laborde referred to the heads he retrieved from the basket for the guillotine as fresh remains. The author commented that the phrase French, frère reste, has a culinary lilt to it, similar to an order you might place in the neighborhood bistro. This culinary imagery, which I talked about, will be recurring throughout the book. For Laborde to succeed in reanimating the head, he had a hypothetical time interval of no more than 7 minutes, but the head, together with the rest of the body, has to go through a journey following the execution back then, with one stop at the cemetery. So he got them at least 1 hour after they had been separated from the bodies. To gain sooner access to his subjects, Laborde decided to cut the distance shorter by boarding his lab, instruments, and crew on a horse-drawn wagon and headed to the cemetery where he got his next head fresher. The head was installed in a styptic-lined container after shooting currents through the brain using needles. The lips twitched and jaw moved. Then the criminal opened the dead person opened one eye. Laborde had to resort to bribery to get ahead of a decapitated criminal named Gagne at a more optimal time. He got it in less than 7 minutes. He injected the arteries on one side with oxygenated, guess what? Cow blood. And he hooked the arteries on the other to a live dog animal. Laborde got a loud jaw snap from the decapitated head for all his endeavors. The process of prepping took about 20 minutes, while irreversible damage, if not death, happens within 6 to 7 minutes after cutting off the blood supply to the head. The French physician Bourrieux took off where Laborde left 18 years later. He decided to beat the iron while hot and collected heads at the scaffold feet. Bourrieux noticed that the eyelids and lips spasmed a few seconds, then rested close. The physician shouted one prisoner's name, Languille. The latter's eyelids lifted slowly and fixated a conjugated gaze at the physician and went back to relax. Bourdieu yelled at the lad's name stronger and noticed the same gaze coming slowly to fix itself deeply in his eyes. The eyes then took a glazed, fixated look like the one the dead were, with no further response. The French physician strongly believed that on both times when the eyes opened, they were alive. They looked alive. They looked as if the person was still alive. Consciousness, personality can be preserved, be it just for a few seconds, that followed decapitation, the author concluded. Does this mean that human head transplant is something to be contemplated or tried? Charles Guthrie and his colleague from St. Louis, Missouri, Alex Carrel, were the first to pioneer organ transplant in 1908 and mastered the skill of anastomosis. They performed numerous experiments on internal and external animal organ transplants and anastomosed them. Carrel won the Nobel Prize, while Guthrie did not uh, win the prize for some reason. Guthrie succeeded in transplanting a dog's head on another dog's neck, grafting the arteries in a way that blood was shunted through the grafted decapitated head, then back to the recipient dogs. The dogs were euthanized after complications had set in. Vladimir Demikov, a Russian scientist, was the first one to succeed into cutting, then restoring full cerebral function to decapitated dogs and puppies' heads in 1950. His subject lasted 2 to 6 days, with one subject lived up to 29 days. The author thought that Vladimir could not keep his subjects alive longer because immunosuppressive therapy was not known to him, and thought the dog survived the procedure, albeit a few days, because the brain is an organ endowed with immune privileges. Robert White, a neurosurgeon in 1960s, experimented with animal isolated brain preparations and implanted them inside other bodies, each other's bodies. He also used cooling systems to keep the brains alive while operating. The author wondered whether the next step would be the human head transplant. To verify whether it was something that is being envisioned, she moved to Cleveland, Ohio, to meet White, the retired surgeon at Metro Health Center, then went up to the neurological research lab where he ran his experiments. Her encounter with Robert White left her with unanswered questions about the brains, the transplanted brain. The author thought that deprived from any sensory input, they would be unable to form memories. As she was heading with the neurosurgeon to the nearby Middle Eastern restaurant to continue to chat about the monkey's brain transplant, she advised the readers to never ever order baba ganoush after a discussion about that involved monkey brains and human brains, etc. And as I said, this is not the first time she makes those comparisons. This involves culinary imagery. The professor agreed that the human head or even total human body transplant could be a reality in the very near future. A beating heart cadaver with intact body and organs except for the brain could house the brain of a sick, handicapped person, someone with an autoimmune immune disorder, for example. Note on the side, aside from what I was talking about, what happened in the book, there has been quite a recent debate that has stirred the online blogs and media about a soon-to-be-performed actual head transplant, and that was supposed to be done by an Italian surgeon, as surgeons from China who declared their confidence in the success of such operations after they had studied and experimented with cutting and dissecting a few dogs' heads and animals, I think also monkeys' heads. A wheelchair-ridden candidate with an autoimmune disease volunteered to be the recipient. The surgeon said They would rely on highly technologized operational rooms, a team of multiple surgeons, diamond sharp cutting blades, cooling systems, speed, their dexterity, their expertise as surgeons and nurse surgeons, and all they needed was an intact heart beating cadaver. Yeah, they're so abundant. You can look it up on YouTube. Enter in the search engine human head transplant, and then you'll see all um, the debates and the discussions about that, and the interviews with the candidate, the volunteer, and then the surgeon who said he would be performing that. And that started in 2012, by the way. The author thinks that with all the advances that might happen in spinal surgeries, there would come a day when such question would not only add a few years to a paralyzed person, but the recipient might actually regain all bodily functions, including ambulation. Such operation is costly beyond belief, we are told, and would not be therefore covered by any insurance as reported in the book, and of course can only be afforded by the extremely, stinkingly, filthily rich people. Robert White, who is a member of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and flies every 2 years to the Vatican to personally inform the Pope of new grounds of debate in science, discovery, and debates, and get his opinions on issues such as euthanasia, stem cell cloning, and other controversial topics, would have wanted the Vatican to adopt a scientific proven theory that the soul inhabits the brain and that not the whole body as Catholicism claims. This is what was reported in the book. Would anybody willingly donate a whole intact body to improve the life of another? The writer asks, then answered, yes, they donate parts of their bodies. They leave all their bodies behind for organ harvest and anatomy studies, I would add. They might not even be told that's what's going to happen to their body. Nobody tells the organ donor volunteer when they ask them if they wanted to donate their organs at the motor vehicle registry and have it part of their identification, organ donor. As a matter of fact, nobody even give you an educational pamphlet or have you sign a written consent. They simply ask you whether you want to be one. Most people think it's a noble thing and they say yes, and they have it on their driver's license. And if an accident happened and they find that on the person's identification that they're an organ donor, they just wheel them to the OR as fast as possible to harvest all the organs. And if they want to do that kind of transplant, they just remove the dead brain and put the other brain. Um, and also some people do not even have that on their identification. They ask their family member when a dead person dies. They ask them if they wanted their own to be an organ donor. So, points of discussion. Given what has been discussed in the previous chapter, does life reside beyond doubt in the brain? This is what I want to discuss. If so, why bother to uproot it from a living body to transplant it from the opposite? Why uproot it from the body that's live, yeah, and to place it, transplant it into a heart-beating cadaver? By uprooting it from the other body, the sickening and the sickly one, that one dies, and then you bring it to the other one to give it a few more years, the new body. But then they didn't tell us that the person would be mobile, moving, and all that. No, they didn't, and there is no science evidence, as we have studied, as people studied in anatomy books and in schools, that once the spinal cord is severed, uh, the functions that are lost for good, unless there are things we don't know about and that are withheld from us. So this goes, as I said, that's what I was discussing. This goes against what has been learned in anatomy books and about the CNS and spinal cord. But again, science might not be very forward with us all. Would you like to be a body donor or a body receiver? How viable would this be? Now, you receive a body, and then the other one is dead. Now, one would wonder, why not that body with all intact organ that still everything is alive and still you're still keeping it alive? Why not revive the brain? Are we at the edge of immortality? Are we soon about to do that? It's possible. It's possible. It's so scary that nobody even dares. Now, how viable would such operations? If so, would you fund it? Suppose you are really, really rich, as the filthy rich ones I was mentioning, and would you like to fund that? So this is what I'm offering for this discussion, and I hope this time my post will be posted, that I'll be still alive and alive live. Talking about that sometimes tend to make you believe you are dead yourself. But actually, this book did the opposite. It had me think about it in a very positive way. Not death, but just that didn't make me scared talking about it. Didn't I didn't run away from it. And thank you for sharing that book with the people, with me. I love the thinking about it. It make me think and wanted to share this with you. And I hope if someone is there and willing to open the ground for discussion. I have a few questions. I just talked about them. Uh, okay. Assalamu alaikum. Hi. You can speak in French if you want. Okay. Just write it. Okay. Even when I end the stream, you can post your comments, and I'll be very happy to hear from you and then to talk to you. Or you can join the discussion now. Next chapter is chapter 10, chapter 11, and 12. Very, very controversial. And also might raise a few questions. The author herself says, I'm just reporting this that I got from some other person, from some other published book. And so that might even bring some liabilities or something. But it's, you heard facts, you read about facts, you want to see if they're true. And she actually said she traveled even to China to investigate certain things, certain fact that she heard about some cannibalism and that was used for therapy. And I that's why I'm saying that what's coming is even more controversial. And I know for certain practices, traditional practices, like for example, in Morocco, where I grew up, see the blood in the placenta. Certain people take that blood and then put it in a little baggies and use it as some talisman on around the baby's neck or hand to ward off evil eye or bad things. But other people say, she's saying in the book, and I've heard it also, that they eat the placenta for therapy, which is kind of cannibalism, or pieces of babies, or let me not spoil it for you. I'll talk about it next time. So I think I should say bye-bye now, and please don't hesitate, just post your comments and I'll be answering them all. I might not have the answers, but I'll be just arguing and think and saying what I know. And if you are somebody who is really expert in anatomy, or a medical student, or a doctor, or neurosurgeon, yeah, I want to hear from those. And also people who might think there would be some kind of liabilities, legal ones, they might also have some of their inputs. And I'll be glad to hear from them, because that's very informative to me. I admit I'm not an authority in either field, but I study a lot. So see you next time, and bye-bye.